commits the U.S. taxpayer to at least $2 billion more dollars to shut down these programs and provides a top-line increase of slightly more than $1 billion per year for 5 years. It terminates the only launch and capsule program which have been guided by NASA's safety criteria to the level of being human rated by NASA. This plan abandons any hope of astronauts actually going anywhere beyond the station for at least 20 years. I'm aware of the OMB statement of NASA's mission of getting ready to go to Mars, but these science projects should be worked on at the same time as the launch systems like Constellation, which will actually get us somewhere. My first question is regarding the speed at which that NASA is shutting down the Constellation. Even though the commercial options for human space flights are not ready at this point. Fixed cost of launching Ares 1 would be about $1.2 billion a year. Any launch system is going to have that high cost or higher. The marginal cost or cost per rocket would be about $120 million for Ares 1 plus about $50 million for Orion capsule. The latest estimate for the completed Falcon 9 is about $130 million. Meanwhile, we should note that the original March 2006 contracts NASA signed with the two companies, which won COTS contract, called for 3 demonstration flights by the fall of 2008, showing the ability to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. Almost 4 years later, we're still waiting on that first flight. The transfer of human spaceflight missions to commercial companies only goes against, number one, 2005 and 2008 Space Act bills, 2008 Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel reports, 2009 Aerospace Safety Panel report, and even the Augustine Commission, which I know you referred to earlier, has recommended a backup launch plan. The intent of Congress was clearly that NASA would continue these programs until Congress made a decision on the President's proposal. Isn't it a big risk for our space program for NASA to be aggressively canceling and freezing all Constellation contracts which were on schedule to be awarded this year?
Well, first of all, Congressman, I believe we're talking about the FY 2011 budget here. That is the President's proposal as what he would like to do in 2011, which obviously is going to be before this committee and other committees of Congress. As I understand it, and I read your letter to the NASA administrator, and I read the response from NASA. As I understand it, NASA is not terminating these contracts at this point. It is not in violation of the statute to which you refer here, and it's not NASA's intention, certainly not the administration's intention, to violate the statute. We know we need to work with Congress if we're going to execute this change in approach in NASA's human spaceflight program, and we would plan to do that. There's no intention to violate the law, and I don't believe the law is being violated.
So is your position then that they are not canceling or freezing any of the contracts?
My understanding is the understanding embodied in Administrator Bolden's response to your letter. I don't know anything that would contradict that at this point. I must say that contract law and contract management is not my field of expertise. And so I'm relying here on what I read in these materials and what the administrator and his staff tell me, which is that they believe they are in compliance with the law. And the intention is to work with the Congress to implement the change in direction for the human spaceflight program, putting a heavier emphasis on the development of new technologies that has been outlined in the administration's FY 2011 budget.
So based on the knowledge you've been given, and if they were to ask your advice on it, you would advise them not to cancel or freeze any contracts?
My advice, first of all, would be to comply with the law.
Okay. The two Space Act bills passed by Congress in 2005 and 2008 supported some commercial space flight development, but never to the point of eliminating our primary launching capsule plans. NASA has spent $500 million on the COTS program. NASA's budget adds another $312 million, which is an additional 60% on top of the 500, and then another 500 on top of that in FY11 for the commercial crew, and then these more. Was there a market study which showed that multiple rocket companies can survive without continued taxpayer support? And can you tell us just how many jobs are created in the first 2 years and how many jobs are lost?
It is my impression that there have been a number of market studies, presumably some of them done by these companies or by their investors, about what the prospects for a commercial space industry are. I'm not personally familiar with those studies, and I can't tell you what particular studies say about the number of jobs. I have seen an estimate that something like 1,700 jobs could be associated with the early phase of the growth of the commercial space industry as envisioned in the President's proposal. But again, this is not, I have to tell you, not my domain of expertise, the economic assessment and the jobs assessments. There are other folks who look at that much more closely than I have.
So you're not real sure about whether there has been any studies?
I'm sure there have been market studies. I mean, these folks aren't crazy. They're not investing their own money, as many of them are, without having done some studies to determine
You're just not aware of anything.
But I'm not personally, I haven't read those studies. I'm not familiar with them in detail. But I'd be happy to get back to you on
Sure,
what,
if you could,